Hi, this is Governor Greg Abbott, and I am so glad to join you in celebrating this year's Barbara Jordan Media Award winners. Thank you to Texas State University's School of Journalism and Mass Communications for hosting this year's remarkable ceremony, which will replicate the success that we've had in the past. These awards are named after a remarkable woman who had the courage to break barriers and to build opportunities for others. This year's winners reflect Barbara Jordan's spirit of inclusion with their respectful portrayals of people with disabilities. I am so pleased to honor Richard Marmolejo for his profile of Sherry Jo Ward, a theater instructor who would not let a rare neuromuscular disease end her career. Also, I'm proud to recognize Amanda Heileman for her remarkable story depicting what campus life is like for students who use wheelchairs. Also, David Chancellor for his inspiring feature on Melanie Peters, a high school track star who, after 24 surgeries in just 6 months, is determined to go to the Paralympic Games. Also, there's David Burge for his story on how wounded veterans are using sports as a way to overcome the challenges of their disabilities. Also, there is Suzanne Garofalo for her story, He's Got the Chops. It's about a young man with autism and learning discipline through karate instruction. And then there's Paul Flaw for his inspiring profile of a professor with multiple sclerosis who found a solution to his physical rehabilitation needs and won a prestigious research grant, all while designing an underwater virtual reality game. And then there's Sarah Miller for Sheltering the Silent. It's a collection of photographs depicting a woman who has lived in a state independent living center since she was just 4 years old. And then there's Emily Goldstein for sharing her personal experience about getting electroconvulsive therapy as a treatment for a major depressive disorder. And then there's Brittany Hamilton for her story about how 2 young adults with intellectual as well as developmental disabilities will be the first residents of an innovative assisted living community in North Texas. And then there is artist Grant Monnier as well as his mother, Julie Monnier, for their inspirational children's book, Grant the Jigsaw Giraffe, Different is More. And then there's Joe Vestano, Cara Doris, and Dagoberto Gil for their stories that appeared in The Right Way to Be Crippled and Naked, The Fiction of Disability. It's an anthology of short fiction stories by writers with disabilities. And then there's Quentin Blackwell, Dan Strickland, Kelly Phillips, and Bob Phillips for Love Hears. It's a story about how Emma Faye Rudkin has spent her life using music and her nonprofit organization to fight for the deaf community. I want you to know that the First Lady joins me in congratulating all of you. Your powerful portrayals of people with disabilities reminds us that our lives aren't measured by how we're challenged. Instead, they are measured by how we respond to those challenges. May God bless you all, and may God forever bless the great state of Texas.
I really think that this is an exciting event. It is exciting because it honors people who are communicators, communicating the reality of life as it is for people who have disabilities.
Theater Instructor Turns Diagnosis into Artwork by Richard Marmolejo, The Collegian. Unwilling to let a rare neuromuscular disease end her career, a South Campus theater adjunct instructor wrote a comedy about it. It's been almost 3 years since renowned local actress and now playwright Sherry Jo Ward officially was diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, or SPS. According to the National Organization for Rare Disorders, it is an acquired neurological disorder characterized by progressive muscle stiffness, rigidity, and repeated episodes of painful muscle spasms. The disease is very rare, Ward said. There's only about 300 people in the country that have it. Back in about December of 2014, I started having some unusual symptoms, she said. I was barely 40 at the time, so it was things I did not expect at my age, like pain and numbness, and then my muscles would just kind of seize up. By February of 2015, I was needing to use a walker. Ward has been a theater professional since she was an undergraduate at Abilene Christian University, where she met her husband, Thomas, a local actor and playwright. Ward said she was inspired to write by her friend Renee Moreno, an actor, director, and educator who died recently and had been in a wheelchair. Right after my diagnosis, I went to have lunch with Renee Moreno, Ward said. We kind of talked about going from being an able-bodied actor to suddenly being disabled. He said, "You're going to find a way to make this play out dramatically." He inspired me to write. That's how Stiff came about. I was terrified, she said. At the dress rehearsal, I was crying. I didn't know how the people would react. It was such an odd thing that I'd written. And she kept telling me, "You're going to be surprised at the reaction." And sure enough, we ended up with a full house for all 6 performances and won awards from the Dallas Theater Critics Forum.
What Students with Wheelchairs Experience on Campus by Amanda Heilman, the University Star. Texas State is known for its scenery because it resides in the middle of hill country. However, students with disabilities may experience a different campus. Joshua Lynch, applied sociology senior, said using a ramp filled with people can be time-consuming. Lynch said the ramps can be out of the way or inconveniently designed. Lee Bryant, recreational administration senior, believes the ramps can be far, but manages to get around campus in his wheelchair. Sometimes people push his chair. Going downhill is awesome. The uphill ramps are just really difficult, Bryant said. I like taking my time, Bryant said. I line up my schedule to where I get as much time in between classes as I can. And if I ever go over to Jowers, I enjoy the ride. Bryant said the Office of Disability Services has been a huge help. Gerardo Altamirano, Accessibility Services Coordinator, said the ODS primarily assists students with academic accommodations and ensuring students have access to university-sponsored events and programs. Students with disabilities are encouraged to register with our office to receive services that range from academic services in the classroom and interpreters for events, Altamirano said. We approve accommodations for individuals who have temporary ambulatory disabilities and have difficulty moving around campus, Altamirano said. Let's say a student has too much fun over spring break and breaks their leg. Then our Cats on the Go service will help that student get to and from class. ODS helps students in wheelchairs by educating them about special routes throughout campus for people with disabilities.
She's just a normal high school kid. Yes, she's in a wheelchair, but otherwise she deals with the same issues any other 14, 15-year-old would.
Melanie Peters is a sophomore at Alamo Heights. She's a triplet, which is cool, and an athlete, which to some is even cooler. Growing up, Melanie was an athlete, basketball, tennis, even hockey. But the summer before her freshman year, her athletic career took a big turn because of an even bigger surgery.
It was for scoliosis, 101-degree curve.
She spent 3 months after in a hospital bed, and 3 more after that at home, alone, isolated, and just plain mad. You would be too. 24 surgeries in 6 months.
It was miserable.
And when she finally did return to school in the spring, she was the new kid. Melanie turned to something familiar for her, but maybe not so familiar for the rest of us.
I got a note that said, we've got a new athlete coming in for track, and she's going to be in a wheelchair. And I said, well, I'm not so sure that, maybe track isn't the right spot for her. So we did a little research and found out, well, no, she is a track athlete. She competes in wheelchair division.
Ricketts soon discovered Melanie was a star. Better than that, she was an athlete he could coach.
That was one thing her mom and other coaches stressed, was she is no different than anybody else. Make her carry her own stuff. Her workouts are the exact same as any other kid. She just does it in her racing chair.
Sports Helps Wounded Warriors Move Forward, Heal, by David Burge, El Paso Times. Sergeant Ryan Major's life changed forever in a flash and a bang in November 2006. While deployed in Iraq, the infantry soldier from Baltimore stepped on an improvised explosive device. He lost both of his legs and several fingers on both hands. Major, now retired, was one of about 70 wounded soldiers and veterans from across the Army who gathered at Fort Bliss last week to compete in the Army trials. The event, which was held at Fort Bliss for the third straight year, is used to determine the Army's team at the upcoming Warrior Games, an Olympic-style event for wounded, injured, and ill service members of all branches. Participating in adaptive sports helped to get Major out of a serious depression he had fallen into after being severely wounded, he said. Adaptive sports are designed or modified for disabled athletes to compete against others with similar disabilities or injuries. Before I got injured, I loved competition, sports, and getting into shape, said Major, who represented the Baltimore Veterans Affairs at the Army trials. Participating in adaptive sports changed my life, he said. Sports also helped him to have a more positive attitude about his injuries, he added. During the Army trials, Army athletes in wheelchairs, with prosthetic limbs, and some with injuries that weren't apparent at first glance, competed in a variety of events. Most had compelling stories, like Major, about how participating in sports got them out of a dark place and thrust them into a new chapter in their lives.
He's Got the Chops. 21-year-old with autism earns second-degree karate black belt, by Suzanne Garofalo. Student and instructor face and bow. Both utter in Japanese, "Onigashimashu," please teach me. Because in karate, disciple and sensei can learn from one another. At this Missouri City dojo, or school, one practitioner is both, and he is proving that teachers are as varied as the color of karate belts. Mike Griffith, a 21-year-old who lives in Sugar Land, has earned a second-degree black belt at Daichi Shotokan Karate Do. The accomplishment is perhaps doubly impressive because he has autism and hypotonia, a condition marked by low muscle tone and strength that meant when he started 7 years ago, he struggled to balance on one foot, let alone kick. Karate has boosted my confidence, Griffith said. That's putting it mildly, according to his mother, Holly Griffith, who recalls that her son didn't speak until he was over 2 years old and didn't use standard American Sign Language as a toddler because he had trouble opening his hands. They discovered that Shotokan Karate at this dojo was the perfect fit. Shotokan is not about fighting, Holly Griffith said. It's about discipline, respect, and mental fortitude, qualities her son has in spades. His sensei, Ricardo Johns, who owns and runs Daichi with his wife Audrey and 2 sons, had to overcome a learning curve too. For decades, Johns, 66, had trained Olympians and other elite athletes, as well as military in the United States and his native Panama. He knew training Griffith would be different. 3 years and 3 additional katas later, Griffith, who studies biology at Wharton County Junior College, has his second-degree black belt. His advice to those with special needs who might like to try karate: go for it, but keep in mind that it is a big commitment. And for parents, don't expect the kid will want to be there right off the bat. Once I got used to how things went and the people involved, I got to where I actually wanted to do more things, the mark of a good student and a good teacher.
It was in the pool during physical rehabilitation for his multiple sclerosis that computer scientist and game designer John Quarles thought to himself, there's got to be a way to make this more engaging. His MS impacts his balance and mobility, which prevents him from using a bike or treadmill. It can also affect his body's ability to regulate its temperature. So the pool's the best place for him to stay fit, which also helps with the MS. But the pool can be monotonous. So we thought, why can't we have virtual reality games underwater? The game Shark Punch is the result. By using a slightly modified diver's mask and waterproof phone, Quarles is creating a game where the player is being circled by a shark, and then it bites. He submerges in the pool and begins looking around. He swings his fists, and again. The game uses the phone's internal motion sensors to register when he punches, the same thing a pedometer app would use. Quarles emerges a few minutes later.
If you play it out of the water versus playing it in the water, I mean, it's a very different experience. When you hear the shark go past you, it almost feels like, well, he's not, but it almost feels like he's going past you.
But the water also limits what's possible. You can turn your head and the device registers it, but you can't move forward and backward in the game. Bluetooth, GPS, Wi-Fi, and other traditional location technology, they don't work great in the water. The radio waves get affected. Shark Punch proves that underwater virtual reality is a thing, and so the National Science Foundation gave Quarles $240,000 to continue the research, to solve the problem of location data underwater, to continue finding ways to improve the experience and improve rehabilitation options. But that isn't the only goal for Quarles.
We don't really understand how people without disabilities would interact in a virtual environment underwater. And honestly, you can learn a lot about both ends of it, both people with disabilities and people without disabilities.
Training divers in a controlled environment could be a future iteration of this technology. Right now, he's pretty happy just to have a change in his workout routine.
Sheltering the Silent. Texas families fear cuts and closures of Special Needs Living Center. Photographs by Sarah A. Miller, Tyler Morning Telegraph. Barbara Chandler relaxes in bed with her 47-year-old special needs daughter, Lisa. Barbara and Max Chandler bless their meal with Lisa while the family sits at the dinner table. Barbara and Lisa sit in the back seat of the family car, smiling at each other. Barbara and Max help Lisa walk through the living room. Barbara feeds Lisa with a spoon. Lisa relaxes in a chair in her room at the Lufkin State Supported Living Center. Barbara, Max, and an aid worker help guide Lisa through the living center. Close-up of Barbara and Lisa's hands holding each other.
How Electroconvulsive Therapy Eased My Depression and Returned Me to My Life by Emily Goldstein, The Dallas Morning News, freelance. There are a lot of things I've forgotten in the past couple of months. Restaurants where I've eaten, friends who've come for dinner, much of last summer's study abroad trip to Japan. I log onto Facebook, and I'm not sure how I'm friends with some of the people who pop up. The memory loss has allowed me to forget parts of the very painful recollections of the past few months. Deep depression that brought suicidal thoughts, the struggle to find medication that would help, 4 brief hospitalizations, and finally, electroconvulsive therapy, which caused the memory issues but provided respite from my mental illness. During a series of 15 ECT treatments, I was not allowed to drive, among other restrictions, including making no important decisions. The therapy began as an inpatient procedure, but I received most treatments as an outpatient. The Mayo Clinic defines ECT as a procedure done under general anesthesia in which small electric currents are passed through the brain, intentionally triggering a brief seizure. The clinic also notes that the therapy, used for mental illness, often works when other treatments are unsuccessful. But after multiple hospitalizations, everything unraveled. I began to realize that I was also lucky to have the option to try ECT. From the time of my first doctor's appointment before I started ECT to my follow-up after my final treatment, my psychiatrist said he saw a profound difference in me, explaining that the therapy was analogous to hitting the reset button. While I try to keep my sense of humor, memory loss continues to frustrate me. I see undergraduates' names and faces, and I know I was their TA, but I can't remember details about them. I dread the comprehensive exam I must pass to graduate because I fear I've forgotten what I learned. I'm constantly weighing how much to tell my professors and peers about my semester off. While I deeply believe in fighting the stigma of mental illness, I am still its victim. I turned 31 at the end of December, and this dear friend gave me the most beautiful gift I've ever received, a notebook filled with truths that I can turn to when depression overwhelms me. I loved it so much that I copied her idea and sent a similar notebook to another friend who was struggling. "Depression lies," I wrote. "Remember the truth. You are loved. You are hilarious. You are brilliant. You are beautiful." Meet the best friends and first residents in a special needs community for adults in Dallas-Fort Worth by Brittany Hamilton, the Dallas Morning News. This December, thousands of young North Texans will anxiously await letters of early acceptance to universities across the country, but not Michael Poston and Chris Wheeler. They already know where they'll land when they leave the nest next summer. Michael, 22, and Chris, 21, will be the first residents and roommates at Daymark Living, a soon-to-be-open community for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Waxahachie. Daymark Living isn't exclusively for college-age adults. It's designed to be a home for young people whose siblings, friends, and peers are transitioning from high school to the adult world. Students like Chris may continue attending public school through the school year in which they turn 22. After that, next steps are less clear. When Daymark Living opens next summer, tentatively projected for June, the structured daily schedule is filled to keep residents engaged, both within the Daymark community and the world outside of it. Some will take a daily shuttle to work in Dallas or Fort Worth, each about 30 minutes from Waxahachie. Those who don't yet have jobs will attend classes on financial literacy, leadership, practical math, and vocational exploration. The idea is that every member of the community will eventually enter the workforce with the ultimate goal of empowering all Daymark Living members to have financial independence. Most currently available jobs for people with intellectual delays pay minimum wage and mean a lifetime of living under the poverty level with government assistance. Other employers have never even considered hiring a person with intellectual and developmental delays. Dr. Patricia Evans, MD, PhD, a neurologist at Children's Health and director of Neurodevelopmental Disabilities Program at UT Southwestern Medical Center, works with families to prepare teen patients to one day be as autonomous as possible, she says. Ideally, young adults will be able to achieve lofty goals, but she stresses that each individual thrives best under a tailor-made plan respective to their individual abilities.
Grant the Jigsaw Giraffe. Different is More, written by Julie Coy-Manier, illustrated by Grant Manier. This is an exciting day at the city zoo. A new baby giraffe has just been born. His name is Grant. Mama Jules checked Grant over and adored him from his head to his hooves, but something was different. His spots weren't spots. They were puzzle pieces, all jigsaw and brown. He is something special, and I love him just the way he is, Mama Jules said. One day, Miss Judy, Jack the macaw flew in to welcome the baby giraffe. Miss Judy could talk and sing. "We all have talents like Miss Judy. We just have to find them," said Mama Jules. As Grant grew, his favorite thing to do was admire the colorful trees, plants, flowers, and animals. "Mama, how do I find my talent?" Grant asked one day. "What inspires you, Grant?" she asked. "I love colors," said Grant. "Look, right here. How can I make these colors?" He studied the beautiful flowers. Mama Jules smiled and said, "Grant, those are the colors of nature. Nature is art." "Art?" asked Grant. "Yes. An artist uses a paintbrush to create the colors of the world," she explained. "But I have hooves, so how will I hold a paintbrush?" he asked. She said with a smile, "You will find a way. You're special. You're not less, you're more. Miss Judy will take you around the zoo today to look for inspiration." Along their walk, they came to the orangutan village. "What brings you out this way?" asked Tom. "I need inspiration. I want to paint beautiful, colorful masterpieces, but I can't hold a brush because I have hooves, and my body is a little awkward," Grant said sadly. "Well, Grant, I know something that you can do that would be awesome," said Tom. "Would you help me out with those yellow bananas high up in that tree? My swing isn't quite what it used to be." "Yes, sir. My neck can reach far and wide." Grant stretched his long neck and shook the bananas loose. Tom shouted, "Yoo-hoo, now that's talent!" "Grant, finding your talent takes time and effort like a jigsaw puzzle. Yes, you're different, but not less, you're more. Thanks for helping out an old guy like me."
The Right Way to Be Crippled and Naked, The Fiction of Disability, edited by Sheila Black, Michael Northern, and Annabelle Hayes, featuring Texas authors Dagberto Gilb, Cara Doris, and Joe Vastano. From the introduction, The Right Way to Be Crippled and Naked, The Fiction of Disability, is a labor of love and something of an experiment. As strange as it may seem, over a decade into the 21st century, there have been no previous anthologies of short fiction by writers with disabilities that feature disabled characters. As in Beauty is a Verb, the new poetry of disability, we've attempted to unpack or open up, rather than resolve the question of what is encompassed or contained within the term disability. To this end, The Right Way to Be Crippled and Naked presents 27 stories by as many authors, some well-known, some published here for the first time. The stories they present range widely through physical, cognitive, and psychological disability, and various social and physical environments. An excerpt from Joe Vastano's chapter, Twinning. She's of the sea, and I'm of the desert. I need craggy mountains and ego-zapping space. I need to be surrounded by other intensely self-protective life forms, cacti, horned lizards, rattlesnakes, and vinegaroons. Above all, I need sun. The ocean is therapy of a different kind for her, dissolving her barriers like water lapping against caked sand. It's moody and cool, but mostly I think it's the salt air that helps her, lithium without the toxicity. She and I have no one else to talk to about our dead father, from whom we inherited bipolar disorder and a tendency to quit on ourselves. I was luckier than Ray, though. At least he tried to buy my love with a 10-speed bike and a rocking horse and a cowboy suit and about a dozen other things.
As young Emma's fingers danced along the keys, she could feel the vibrations of each note. She realized that music didn't have to be heard to be played. And despite her severe hearing loss, she began to transform her silence into rhythm and melodies.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try.
Through music, doors began to open for Emma that she never imagined possible. She started competing in the pageant circuit, and in 2015 won the title of Miss San Antonio, becoming the first deaf person in history to do that. Since then, she's placed top 10 in a number of other pageants, giving her a national platform for the deaf and hard of hearing.
Emma Faye Rudkin, San Antonio.
Music didn't just give Emma a skill that opened doors in the pageant circuit, it also gave her a way to meet people at school. People like Ryan Proudfoot.
In this world there is trouble, but you bring peace.
Who quickly realized that although Emma can't hear, music is a language they both speak.
Tell me about the song the two of you wrote together.
So it's called Love Hears.
Which I don't always understand, yet I know that I'm understood.
We sat down to write a song which is about the deaf and the hearing coming together in relationship.
The more that you listen to it, you discover, oh, it's not just about this deaf and hearing person. I had words in that song that I just knew was such a universal truth, even though it was about being deaf and about being lonely. You stepped in to share this stillness.
Love Hears comes from the deepest roots of Emma's story and touches on the brokenness she felt growing up. But the lyrics also paint a different picture, one that speaks of embracing your differences and never being held back by an obstacle. It's something she had to learn and is now teaching others through her nonprofit organization, Aid the Silent.
The goal for me is to never lose that first heart of it's loving people and it's making the deaf and hard of hearing finally the guest of honor. And it's that they would know this incredible love for them, that they're not stuck in these circumstances and in these broken places, that there really is hope. People always ask me if I could choose to be hearing or deaf, which one would I choose? And I, without fail, would choose to be deaf. It wasn't like that my whole life, but now it's just that I can see just the person that I am, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
I am delighted that these persons who are recipients of these awards today understand the reality that is important, crucial, urgent, that it be communicated.